Hey everyone, welcome back to Miniature Painting 101, a series of videos where I teach you all about painting miniatures from start to finish and everything in between. And this is part 100. We're in the triple digits. I can't believe that, people. Horses. How to paint horses using a dry brush approach as opposed to the layered approach that I showed you last week. So we start off by this model entirely. I base coated entirely with dryad bark. As I showed you last week, where I painted all using a nice thin down approach with dryad bark. So now I'm going to take a very similar color scheme as last week, and I'll take a Gorthor Brown to make a 2-to-1 mix of dryad bark and Gorthor Brown, put a little bit on my dry brush, obviously wipe off most of it, and then do a dry brush over the horse itself. Obviously, when you're dry brushing, you want to work perpendicular to the muscles themselves. As we did last week, we'll be using the muscles as the dictator of how we're going to highlight up this horse. But the big difference between last week and this week is, rather than highlighting up and layering it up, we're going to just do a series of light dry brushes. As you can see, I sometimes even go back afterwards because I realized it was too light and I want to make it a little heavier. And just work perpendicular to the muscle groups, pick up on the raised areas, and that's pretty much it in a nutshell. But the benefit of doing a series of dry brushes as opposed to highlighting is that you get a more realistic blend of colors, and you also get a nice texture, because all these dry brushes on top of each other produce a really nice texture in which it's that dusted appearance, which ends up giving the model a bit of like a furish texture and makes it look a little bit more realistic. Plus, you don't get as extreme of a highlight as you did with the layering approach, but I recommend using either depending on what you want to do. As you can see, this one's going by nicely, and I added some more Gorthor Brown to make it a 1-to-1 mix, and then I added even more Gorthor Brown to make it a 1-to-2 mix. And I just repeated this process once again, each step getting lighter and lighter, focusing on areas that are facing more vertically. So I did the stomach, for example, in one part, but then I kind of ignored it for the rest of the tutorial. And I'm just working my way towards the light source and on the muscles. And my goal is to just keep going and highlight up these areas a little bit at a time and work my way towards a lighter color. With each step, obviously, doing a lighter and lighter dry brush. So now I'm just doing Gorthor Brown, just straight Gorthor Brown over the model. Once again, as you can see. And with each step, I'm doing a lighter and lighter dry brush. And it's getting nicer and nicer blended, and as you can see, there's actually quite the nice texture going on. So that's one of the benefits of the dry brushing approach. The downside is you do waste a bit of paint, and and it tends to be a little bit messier and less controlled. And then finally, we're going to take Scrag Brown and add it in just to make it a little bit more warm of a tone. I'll try to do a light dry brush of this 1-to-1 mix of Gorthor Brown and Scrag Brown. And it's just to lighten it up slightly. So as you can see, I'm picking off on the raised areas and towards that center part of the muscle. I'm trying to get a little more focus there. And that's about it. It's going to warm up the horse just slightly. And that's the thing that you need to kind of do with dry brushing, is you kind of go to a lighter color scheme ultimately. Or use lighter colors, because the dusting approach will end up with a bit of a darker result as opposed to the other ones. And now we're just take some Administratum Gray and repeat a light dry brush over the mane. As you can see, I'm just doing a quick overbrush / dry brush over the mane and the tail. And that's basically in a nutshell. And you can work towards blending it towards the fur. But that's painting a horse in a nutshell. As I said, just use the muscle groups as a dictator of how to highlight up. Always dry brush, of course, perpendicular to the muscle groups, and do light dry brushes a little bit at a time until you're happy with the color scheme. As you can see, there's some great development over the muscles, and it definitely has muscle tones and a bit of a texture to it, which is a great benefit of the dry brushing. And that's it. So now we can compare it to the other one. So here's the horse from this week on this side of the horse, and last week's one. As you can see, the layered approach, we just had to use layers and to accentuate one. This one looks a little more dusted, and they both look great. So you can choose whichever one you want. One has a little more of a texture, but is a little more dusty and wasteful. But the other one, you just have to try to make the tones yourself. So as always, thank you so much for watching this episode of Miniature Painting 101, and stay tuned for part 101, just like the Dalmatians around the corner next week, as always. But if you don't want to wait for next week, check out The Warp. Click on the link below for a free 14-day trial to my other YouTube channel, where not only we get to see the next 6 months worth of Miniature Painting 101 episodes before anyone else, like you would have seen this episode 6 months ago, you get to see over 100 start to finish painting tutorials, dozens of other videos, battle reports, face-off episodes, an Airbrush 101 series, Q&Js, tons of content. Go and check it out. Hundreds of videos. I know you'll love it. So thank you as always for watching. Until next time, this is Jay saying, Happy painting, everyone.